Yo, what's going on, everybody? It's Blessed Mindset. We back with another stream, man. Another research day. Another research day. Let's get it, coach. Let's get it, coach. Oh, Cooley about to debate tonight. Okay. Shout out Cooley. I don't think we got any Kantian ethics. We about to just be on stream for a quick hour or so doing some quick research. Kant's moral philosophy, coach. Yeah. Ooh. La 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 la. Ooh. Kant's moral philosophy. We probably gotta get into some of this. Oh, I read some of this. Damn. Research day, research day. I wonder if my boys from Discord will join up. That boy Rise. That boy ain't even on.
Kant's moral philosophy. Immanuel Kant argued that the supreme principle of morality is a principle of practical rationality that he dubbed the categorical imperative. Kant characterized a CI as an objective, rationally necessary, and unconditional principle that we must follow despite any natural desires we may have to the contrary.
Kant characterized the categorical imperative as an objective, rationality necessary and unconditional principle that we must follow despite any natural desires we may have to the contrary. See, this nigga Immanuel Kant shit is just so fucking like, it's so fucking complex, bro. Like, damn, I might have to take 2-3 weeks on this nigga shit, bro.
Immanuel Kant argued that the supreme principle of morality is a principle of practical rationality that he dubbed the categorical imperative. Kant characterized a CI as an objective, rationally necessary, and unconditional principle that we must follow despite any natural desires we may have to the contrary. All specific moral requirements, according to Kant, are justified by this principle, which means that all immoral actions are irrational because they violate the CI. Other philosophers, such as Hobbes, Locke, and Aquinas, had also argued that moral requirements are based on standards of rationality. However, these standards were either instrumental principles of rationality for satisfying one's desires, as in Hobbes, or external rational principles that are discoverable by reason, as in Locke and Aquinas. Kant agreed with many of his predecessors that an analysis of practical reason reveals the requirement that rational agents must conform to instrumental principles. Yet he also argued that conformity to the CI, and hence to moral requirements themselves, can nevertheless be shown to be essential to rational agency. This argument was based on his striking doctrine that a rational will must be regarded as autonomous, or free, in the sense of being the author of the law that binds it. The fundamental principle of morality, the CI, is none other than the law of an autonomous will.
I might see if this nigga Rise on, man. I need to. Oh, that nigga Rise that even all. I was about to say. Just one nigga rise, guys. This nigga smart as fuck, nigga. This nigga in my Discord, bruh. He be giving me so much fucking game and shit. Trying to understand these fucking ideas.
Thus, at the heart of Kant's moral philosophy is a conception of reason whose reach in practical affairs goes well beyond that of a Humean slave to the passions. Moreover, it is the presence of this self-governing reason in each person that Kant thought offered decisive grounds for viewing each as possessed of equal worth and deserving of equal respect.
Kant thought offered decisive grounds for viewing each as possessed of equal worth and deserving equal respect. Yeah, it's one of those principles that sees everybody equal under the objective moral standard, or God, if you want to get more divine command theory-ish, guys. And that's the idea. The idea is to have an objective standard that can treat everybody equal. If not, if everybody isn't treated the same morally and shouldn't have the same respect for one another, why not just conquer nations? That's the reason why niggas conquer other niggas, because they look at this nigga like, oh, this nigga weak. Why not just take what everything he got? So we need a governing principle or governing morality or God to set a standard that's above us, independent of humans. That's the idea, guys. That is the idea in which this nigga Immanuel Kant is talking about. Like an objective, rational, moral standard, which is deontology.
Kant's most influential positions in moral philosophy are found in the groundwork of the metaphysics of morals, but he developed, enriched, and in some cases modified those views in later works such as the Critique of Practical Reason, the Metaphysics of Morals, Anthropology from a pragmatic point of view, Religion within the Boundaries of Mere Reason, as well as his essays on history and related topics. Kant's lectures on ethics, which were lecture notes taken by 3 of his students on the courses he gave in moral philosophy, also include relevant material for understanding his views. We will mainly focus on the foundational doctrines of the groundwork, even though in recent years, some scholars have become dissatisfied with this standard approach to Kant's views and have turned their attention to the later works. We find the standard approach most illuminating, though we will highlight important positions from the later works where needed.
All right. I don't know why these pussy niggas be hating me and they be trying to side a deal. Kant's moral philosophy. I need to I don't know why these pussy niggas be hating me and they been trying to deal. Guys, I'm just reading off. Listen, I was able to grab this. The reason why I don't read it off of this because I cannot highlight, right? I could just have Speechify read it off to us. But the thing is that I cannot highlight, guys. Remember, I cannot highlight. So what I do is I actually put it in my Speechify so I'm able to highlight. So when we come back to it, we can look at this and be like, whoa, we highlighted this spot, you know? This is the most important parts. Sometimes I fail in finding the most important parts, but the idea is to try to find the most important parts. That's the idea.
1. Aims and methods of moral philosophy. The most basic aim of moral philosophy, and so also of the groundwork, is, in Kant's view, to seek out the foundational principle of a metaphysics of morals, which Kant understands as a system of a priori moral principles that apply the CI to human persons in all times and cultures.
This nigga is, bro, my God, bro. It's like, bro, if a nigga just was in a debate with me that is based his morality on Kantian ethics, it's like, it's so hard. It's gonna be hard to argue with these niggas, bro. An objective, think about it, like an objective moral standard. Like, let's say a nigga don't even believe in God, right? A nigga don't believe in God. All he's saying that there's an objective moral standard in the universe that we must abide by, that is independent of human minds. It can be integrated with human minds, but it's let me break down some philosophical terms for you guys. So, objective means independent of the mind. Subjective means dependent of our mind. So a lot of subjectivists, they believe morals are dependent on human minds. What Kant is arguing for is that there's an objective standard outside of human minds. And that's why we submit to it. Because if it's like, if we just socially construct our realities, it's like, well, our morality, I should say, if we sit there and socially construct our morality, why the fuck wouldn't I just create a morality that benefits me? It's gonna be more egotistical. Oh, I'm about to create rules to benefit me. I can fuck as many bitches I want, nigga. I can steal as much money I want. And it's like, nah, bro, that's not it. The idea is to have an objective moral standard outside of yourself so you can't create your morality. The idea is to submit to the morality that is factual in nature and believe that there is that morality that we submit to is the good itself. And that's why Kant talks about the goodwill and shit like that. You see what I'm saying? Like, and that's, I'm trying to break this shit down to niggas, son. Like, I try to break this shit down. Niggas don't understand this, bro. And it's like, I don't understand. It's like, it's going past my head. But it took me years to fucking understand, like, whoa, hold on, bro. I can't sit here and socially construct my fucking morality, bro. Like, that shit is fucking stupid. That shit doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense at all.
Kant pursued the most basic aim of moral philosophy, and so also of the groundwork, is, in Kant's view, to seek out the foundational principle of a metaphysics of morals, which Kant understands as a system of a priori moral principles that apply the CI to human persons in all times and cultures. Kant pursues this project through the first 2 chapters of the groundwork. He proceeds by analyzing and elucidating common sense ideas about morality, including the ideas of a goodwill and duty. The point of this first project is to come up with a precise statement of the principle or principles on which all of our ordinary moral judgments are based. The judgments in question are supposed to be those that any normal, sane, adult human being would accept on due rational reflection.
He proceeds by analyzing common sense ideas about morality, including the ideas of a goodwill and duty. Right, so that's what deontology means, man. It's duties. It's based on your intentions. It's based off of you have a duty to submit to those moral laws. You have a duty to act in the right way. It's not about consequences, guys.
He proceeds by analyzing and elucidating common sense ideas about morality, including the ideas of a goodwill and duty. The point of this first project is to come up with a precise statement of the principle or principles on which all of our ordinary moral judgments are based. The judgments in question are supposed to be those that any normal, sane, adult human being would accept on due rational reflection. Nowadays, however, many would regard Kant as being overly optimistic about the depth and extent of moral agreement. Perhaps he is best thought of as drawing on a moral viewpoint that is very widely shared, and which contains some general judgments that are very deeply held. In any case, he does not appear to take himself to be primarily addressing a genuine moral skeptic, such as those who often populate the works of moral philosophers. That is, someone who doubts that she has any reason to act morally, and whose moral behavior hinges on a rational proof that philosophers might try to give.
I wonder if we can find some more Kantian ethics. I wonder if we can find some more sources on this shit. Guys, we can Oh shit. Like some quicker sources. John Rawls. What the fuck? Oh shit. Bro, I fuck with these niggas, bro. These niggas be having some good ass sources, bro. Instead of reading a whole goddamn encyclopedia. This ain't no encyclopedia day, guys. This ain't, I mean, because I'm going to come back to that shit, though. But we could just get a quick overview of this shit and see how that shit is, you know what I'm saying? Like, that's the idea. Deontology.
Trolley problems are philosophical thought experiments where we make an imaginary choice. Trolley problems are philosophical thought experiments where we make an imaginary choice that usually ends in someone getting, well, run over by a trolley. Here we will use trolley problems to introduce Kantian ethics, which is the ethical theory developed by Immanuel Kant, 17...
Bro, what the fuck is trolley problems, bro? Is this what I'm supposed to be on? Applying that? What is this? What is this, dude? Trolley problems are philosophical thought experiments where we make an imaginary choice that usually ends in someone getting, well, run over by a trolley. What the fuck? I don't understand. Here we use the trolley problems to introduce Kantian ethics, which is the ethical theory developed by Immanuel Kant.
Five people are tied to a trolley track. An out-of-control trolley is coming down the track. The trolley can't be stopped, but you can pull a lever to divert the trolley to a side track, saving 5, but killing 1. 1. What should you do? Most people respond, switch. We should try to save as many lives as possible.
Right. Oh, I know what the fuck is happening. I remember this shit in my fucking ethics class. I think they did it in a different scenario, though. Ah, man, I forgot. I think it was like some shit about like being in a doctor's office or some shit. But basically what's happening is that the trolley problem, they saying, should you kill all these people? Wait, can you kill all these people to save this one person? And then most niggas will be like, oh yeah, save all those 5 people. But then you're like gonna have to kill that one person. Right? But the problem is that in Kantian ethics, it's not about how many people you save, it's about the rules itself. Let me say that again. It's not about how many people you save or how much happiness you produce. It's about the rules itself. You got to follow the moral duties, the moral laws. Right? So a utilitarian would actually try to save the most lives for the most people. And actually, a lot of niggas will actually do that. I mean, it's actually logical thinking, like, you know what I'm saying? But in Kantian ethics, it's different. And we're not talking about threshold deontology, right? If we're talking about threshold deontology is when you follow the moral duties and laws, right, until the consequences are so severe to the point where you have to break the rule, the exception to the rule. But the reason why it's threshold deontology, because Immanuel Kant did not argue for threshold deontology. Immanuel Kant argued for a strict, rigid rule system. If you lie, if the universal law is you shouldn't lie, then everybody has to stay in that rule, like, forever. Like, you know what I'm saying? There's no threshold. There's no breaking that. There's no exceptions to the rule.
Possible. But consider a modification to this experiment. The story is the same, except now there is no switch and no sidetrack. However, on a footbridge, farther up the track, before the 5 tied-up individuals, is a precariously perched giant man. If you give the giant a push, he will fatally fall on the track, stopping the trolley and sparing the 5 tied-up souls. What should you do? Most people insist, don't push. But in both cases, it's 1 life versus 5 lives. If we were solely concerned with total lives saved, then don't switch and don't push should be morally equivalent, and switch and push should be morally equivalent. Are they? 2. Kantian deontology and the categorical imperative. To many people, these actions don't seem to be equivalent, despite their consequences being the same. 2.
Like I said, it's not about consequences with deontology, guys.
Deontology is a type of moral theory that denies that morality is solely about consequences. 3. The most famous deontological theory was developed by Immanuel Kant. 4. Kant's ethics, and the overall philosophical system in which it is embedded, is vast and incredibly difficult, but we can see his ethics as grounded in a view about what we are, namely, persons. According to Kant, persons are, essentially, rational creatures who are deserving of respect. 5. This rationality grounds what Kant calls the categorical imperative, the fundamental ethical rule from which all particular ethical rules derive. This imperative is categorical, in that we must follow it, even if we don't want to. Kant argues that there is one categorical imperative that can be expressed in 3 different formulations, although the first 2 are by far the most important. The first formulation is based on the idea of a maxim, a principle for acting in a certain way to achieve a certain goal. 8. If a maxim were a universal law, then everyone would act on that maxim. In turn, Kant's first formulation goes like this. Act only in accordance with that maxim through which you can at the same time will that it become a universal law.
Maxim. Look up the definition of maxim again so I can understand it more. I keep forgetting. A maxim, Kantian definition, Kant. A subjective principle or personal rule or action. Yes. Now I remember. So a maxim, guys, is the personal rule that you set for yourself. So, like, let's say I want to lose weight, right? The maxim is the rule that I set to myself, like, oh, I have to eat in a calorie deficit for 8 weeks, right? Or something like that. Or is that a hypothetical imperative? No, the hypothetical imperative would be like, if I was to eat in a calorie deficit for this amount of time, right, I would lose this amount of weight. But the maxim is the subjective principle itself. It's a huge difference, guys. Huge difference.
Law. The basic idea of this formulation is that it's wrong to make a special exception to some rule for yourself. If your maxim is, I will sneak into a movie without paying so I can see the movie for free, then you are trying to make a special exception for yourself. The maxim wouldn't work if it were a universal law, because almost no one would show movies, because it wouldn't be profitable. But of course, I will buy a ticket to a movie so I can see the movie is perfectly universalizable. If everyone followed that maxim, movies could still exist.
Right. So, like, in this example, it's like niggas that follow deontology cannot break the rule. If the rule is, oh, we cannot sneak into the movie, you can't make a personal rule like, oh yeah, I could just sneak into the movies. Like, nigga, no, nigga, like that means that, nigga, you're breaking the rule, nigga. That means if everybody was to do that, nigga, like they said, it wouldn't be profitable.
Exist. Its second formulation is this. Act in such a way that you treat humanity, whether in your own person or in the person of any other, never merely as a means to an end, but always at the same time as an end. This means that we are never allowed to merely use people. People must be respected as ends in themselves. Using people as mere means involves treating them as mere objects or in ways to which they could not or would not consent, which is to disrespect them. 10.3. Applying the categorical imperatives. The second formulation of the categorical imperative helps justify the common trolley problem intuitions above. In the first experiment, while flipping the switch would kill someone, we are not thereby using the person we kill. His death is an unfortunate and unintended consequence of our attempt to save 5 lives. In the giant man variant, pushing him in front of the train does use him, as a mere sack of sinew and bones, no better than a rock. This difference, says the Kantian, accounts for our moral intuitions, and the differing moral status of the 2 cases.
What? I'm not understanding this shit. In the giant man variant, pushing him in front of the train does not use him as a mere sack or bones. No better than the rocks. I guess I don't understand what's it called? Like, what are they trying to say? Is niggas trying to say, like, they are just trying to tempt him? in this? Like, is it more of like an attempt thing of like we're just trying to save them? I mean, bro, you gotta use some fucking logic, bro. If a nigga, you use a nigga to like, if you push a nigga off a bridge to try to save the other niggas, you gotta like look at it like an inductive. You gotta use inductive reasoning. It's like, bro, is that nigga even gonna survive, my nigga? Like, that nigga probably ain't gonna survive anyways, nigga. Like, you're attempting. But I understand what's happening. They're basically saying if you attempt, right? And this is why it's like very important to like understand these theories, my nigga, because it's like this is a smart way to handle it, right? But us as Christians, we're gonna be like, oh, even we're attempting to save this nigga, right? But we know that God is gonna forgive us for our sins, especially if our heart is in there. Like, we trying to save this nigga, but it seems like it's impossible. Don't you see what the fuck is happening? We got two rules. We got utilitarianism on this side. We got Kantian ethics on this side. We got a duty to fucking save these people, right? But then you think about in the utilitarianism, utilitarian perspective, niggas is gonna be like, whoa, hold on, like, how can we save as many people as possible? And we don't know the answer. That's why a lot of the times we submit to God, because it's like, damn, only really God knows the answer. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's fucking hard with these fucking these arguments. Like,
cases. To apply the first formulation here, we must determine which rules we would be following.
What the fuck? I don't know where I'm at. We'll do an objective. Applying.
The second formulation of the categorical imperative helps justify the common trolley problem intuitions above. In the first experiment, while flipping the switch would kill someone, we are not thereby using the person we kill. His death is an unfortunate and unintended consequence of our attempt to save 5 lives. In the giant man variant, pushing him in front of the train does use him as a mere sack of sinew and bones, no better than a rock. This difference, says the Kantian, accounts for our moral intuitions and the differing moral status of the two cases. To apply the first formulation here, we must determine which rules we would be following with different courses of action, such as the rule I will kill to save lives, which may not be universalizable. 4. An objection. Many objections have been raised to Kantian deontology, but we'll review just one. Kant argued that, given the categorical imperative's second formulation, lying always involves using someone as mere means, since that manipulation disrespects their rationality.
Bro, I ain't gonna say no names, but I swear to fucking God, I was just telling the nigga, bro, like, Kant advocated for this, bro. Nigga was sitting here telling me, bro, like, he didn't. But then he switched the argument, nigga, like, nigga was like, nigga like, bro, it don't matter, bro. I'm like, all right, bro, if it don't matter, I mean, that's a different claim than sitting here saying he never said that, though, bro. Like, that's one of Kant's prescriptions, my nigga. Like, we talking about Kantian ethics, nigga.
So, Kant maintained that even if a known murderer asks you where someone is presumably to murder them, it would be wrong to lie to the murderer about where that person is. But most people say it's not morally required to tell the truth to the murderer. At this point, the Kantian deontologist has some options. They might agree with Kant and insist that lying to the murderer is wrong. Or they might argue that while Kant was right that I will lie whenever I want cannot be willed as a universal law, I will lie when doing so will very likely save innocent people's lives can. Neither chaos nor contradictions result from universalizing that rule. Furthermore, helping the murderer might be treating the potential victim as a mere means, and so not respecting them as a person. 5. Conclusion. To many, there seems to be something essentially right with a Kantian brand of ethics. That is, that respect and rationality are fundamentally important for our ethical lives. Nevertheless, Kant's theory, like all ethical theories, does come with its theoretical and practical challenges.
Of course. Notes. Fuck these notes. Bro, let's get on fucking, let's get on fucking Google Scholar, bro. Oh, shit. Oh, shit. Book. Oh, shit, I got this fucking book. Damn, is this free? Oh, no, 15. Listen, guys, I got this book. Damn. Yeah, I was reading a little bit of this shit. I forgot about that shit. Books is thick. Nah, that nigga Wood, bro. That nigga know what he talking about when he talking about Kantian ethics, bro. La 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 da 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 da. See, this nigga Wood, bro. I got this book too, bro. Man, I fucking wish I could read it out with you guys, bro. We could be getting it in, bro. I got this shit paperback. I'm trying to figure out how the fuck can I stream the physical books. It's like I can sit here and read it to you guys, but it ain't gonna be like as fucking fast, bro. It's like these days we trying to get information quick. We trying to understand the information too, but we trying to get it quick. So it's like I'm trying to fucking think of how the fuck would I unless we do like Audible and niggas don't ban me from Audible. Like we do like Audible. Let me fucking think. Like niggas could do Audible and then I'm sitting here reading the physical book. But you niggas wouldn't be able to see it. Like so I don't fucking know, bro. I don't fucking know. Or we just keep the physical book. I'll probably just keep the physical books myself. Oh shit. Some niggas is virtue ethics. Oh, hell yeah. Virtue ethics, Kantian ethics, consequentialism. Mm. Virtue ethics, the development of a virtuous character. Kantian ethics, the development of a good will. Consequential ethics. No central activity is specified. This is an open. Whoa. I didn't know I could fucking highlight shit. That's tight. Damn. I mean, should I get this shit? Should I get this shit for like a 23-page paper? Should I use this as a source? It's possible.
Introduction. Contemporary theories of virtue ethics are often presented as theories that are in opposition to Kantian ethics and consequentialist ethics. Contemporary theories of virtue ethics are often presented as theories that are in opposition to Kantian ethics and consequentialist ethics. One reason that is commonly put forward to justify this opposition is that they take different moral questions to be the central or fundamental moral question. Virtue ethics takes character to be at the center of morality, making the fundamental moral question, what sort of character would the virtuous person have?
What the fuck? What's up with my shit, gang? I don't know why these pussy niggas be hating me. Should I call the slide deontology or Kantian ethics? I'll probably use Kantian ethics. Bro, what the fuck, bro? This is not what I wanted, bro. Oh, come on, bro. Lay out. Background, nigga. No, nigga. Choose image. No. Whoa, whoa. Huh, I'm gonna just start the fuck over, bro. What is happening? I don't know what he's me hate me and I'm trying to do. I don't wanna brag at me and attack me when a bunch of times we might not live. Yo, niggas is scared to debate me, bro. Why is niggas so scared, bro? It's fucking crazy. Like, niggas is really fearing me, bro. Niggas really are scared to debate me, bro. And it's fucking crazy. Niggas is so fucking scared. Niggas are so fucking scared to debate me, bro. It's so fucking crazy, bro. I'm getting bored, bro. I'm getting bored. Where the fuck is the con? This nigga fucking con, bro. Let's see. We cranked out the whole shit, guys. We cranked out that whole motherfucking shit. Oh, yeah. We could get some of this information from here, too. What? Is there? Oh, shit. Kant. Oh, this nigga got hella shit on Kant. Guys, we about to go into this elements of moral philosophy, no cap. I got this free book, man. This shit's fire.
Are there absolute moral rules? You may not do evil that good may come. St. Paul, Letter to the Romans, 901. Harry Truman and Elizabeth Anscombe. Harry S. Truman will always be remembered as the man who made the decision to drop the atomic bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. When he became president in 1945, following the death of Franklin D. Roosevelt, Truman knew nothing about the bomb. Roosevelt's advisors had to fill him in. The Allies were winning the war in the Pacific, they said, but at a terrible cost. Plans had been drawn up for an invasion of Japan, but that battle would be even bloodier than the D-Day assault on Normandy had been. Using the atomic bomb on one or two Japanese cities might bring the war to a speedy end, making the invasion unnecessary. Truman was at first reluctant to use the new weapon. The problem was that each bomb would obliterate an entire city, not just the military targets, but the hospitals, schools, and homes. Women, children, old people, and other non-combatants would be wiped out along with the military personnel. The Allies had bombed cities before, but Truman sensed that the new weapon made the issue of non-combatants more acute. Moreover, the United States was on record as condemning attacks on civilian targets. In 1939, before America had entered the war, President Roosevelt had sent a message to the governments of France, Germany, Italy, Poland, and Great Britain, denouncing the bombardment of cities in the strongest terms. He had called it an inhuman barbarism, the ruthless bombing from the air of civilians, which has resulted in the maiming and in the death of thousands of defenseless men, women, and children, has sickened the hearts of every civilized man and woman, and has profoundly shocked the conscience of humanity. If resort is had to this form of inhuman barbarism during the period of the tragic conflagration with which the world is now confronted, hundreds of thousands of innocent human beings who have no responsibility for, and who are not even remotely participating in, the hostilities which have now broken out, will lose their lives. Truman expressed similar thoughts when he decided to authorize the bombings. He wrote in his diary that I have told the SEC of war, Mr. Stimson, to use it so that military objectives and soldiers and sailors are the target and not women and children. The target will be a purely military one. It is hard to know what to make of this, since Truman knew that the bombs would destroy whole cities. Nonetheless, it is clear that he was worried about the issue of non-combatants. It is also clear that Truman was sure of his decision. Winston Churchill, the wartime leader of Great Britain, met with Truman shortly before the bombs were dropped, and he later wrote, "The decision whether or not to use the atomic bomb to compel the surrender of Japan was never even an issue. There was unanimous, automatic, unquestioned agreement around our table." After signing the final order, thus sealing the fate of Hiroshima, Truman later said that he slept like a baby. Elizabeth Anscombe, who died in 2001, was a 20-year-old student at Oxford University when World War II began. At that time, she co-authored a controversial pamphlet arguing that Britain should not go to war because countries at war inevitably end up fighting by unjust means. Miss Anscombe, as she was always known, despite her 59-year marriage and her 7 children, would go on to become one of the 20th century's most distinguished philosophers and the greatest woman philosopher in history. Miss Anscombe was also a Catholic, and her religion was central to her life. Her ethical views reflected traditional Catholic teachings. In 1968, after Pope Paul VI affirmed the Church's ban on contraception, she wrote a pamphlet explaining why artificial birth control is immoral. Late in her life, she was arrested while protesting outside a British abortion clinic. She also accepted the Church's teaching about the ethical conduct of war, which brought her into conflict with Truman. Harry Truman and Elizabeth Anscombe crossed paths in 1956. Oxford University was planning to give Truman an honorary degree in thanks for America's wartime help, and those proposing the honor thought it would be uncontroversial. But Anscombe and 2 other faculty members opposed the idea. Although they lost, they forced a vote on what would otherwise have been a rubber stamp approval. Then, while the degree was being conferred, Anscombe knelt outside the hall, praying. Anscombe wrote another pamphlet, this time explaining that Truman was a murderer because he had—
Yo, fuck this shit.
9.2. The categorical imperative. The idea that moral rules have no exceptions is hard to defend. It is easy enough to explain why we should break a rule. We can simply point to cases in which following the rule would have terrible consequences. But how can we defend not breaking the rule in such cases? It is a daunting assignment. We might say that moral rules are God's inviolable commands. Apart from that, what can be said? Before the 20th century, there was one major
book. What's this book called? The Elements of Moral Philosophy.
Before the 20th century, there was one major philosopher who believed that moral rules are absolute. Immanuel Kant argued that lying is wrong under any circumstances. He did not appeal to theological considerations. He held, instead, that reason always forbids lying. To see how he reached this conclusion, we need to look at his general theory of ethics. Kant observed that the word ought is often used non-morally. If you want to become a better chess player, you ought to study the games of Garry Kasparov. Much of our conduct is—
If you want to go to college, you ought to take the SAT. This is true, guys. This is hypothetical imperatives.
The pattern is this. We have a certain desire. We recognize that a certain course of action will help us get what we want, and so we follow the indicated plan. Kant called these hypothetical imperatives because they tell us what to do provided that we have the relevant desires. A person who did not want to improve her chess would have no reason to study Kasparov's games. Someone who did not want to go to college would have no reason to take the SAT. Because the binding force of the ought depends on having the relevant desire, we can escape its force by letting go of the desire. So, for example, I can avoid taking the SAT by deciding that I don't want to go to college. Moral obligations, by contrast, do not depend on having particular desires. The form of a moral obligation is not if you want so-and-so, then you ought to do such and such. Instead, moral requirements are categorical. They have the form you ought to do such and such.
Oh, the categorical imperative are moral. Specifically, the hypothetical imperative is hypotheticals. What is a synonym for hypothetical, guys? Synonym. What is a synonym for hypothetical? Theoretical. Ooh, I like that. Theoretical, guys. Theoretical. Hypothetical is theoretical. Damn. My dumb ass never even put two and two together. You ever do that? Like, you ever fucking, like, really look up a word and be like, man, I know what that shit mean, low key. I just can't think of no other words that's similar. Then it's like, damn, hold on, that word is similar to that word for real. That is the same shit for real. Damn near, like. Hold on, guys. I'm gonna use the bathroom. Right, pussy nigga behind me. That's all I'm trying to do. I had dreams on my obsession, man.
Moral obligations, by contrast, do not depend on having particular desires. The form of a moral obligation is not if you want so-and-so, then you ought to do such and such. Instead, moral requirements are categorical. They have the form you ought to do such and such, period.
They're categorical.
The moral rule is not, for example, that you ought to help people if you care about them, or if you want to be a good person. Instead, the rule is that you should help people no matter what your desires are. That is why moral requirements cannot be escaped simply by saying, but I don't care about that. Hypothetical oughts are easy to understand. They merely tell us to do what is necessary to achieve our goals. Categorical oughts, on the other hand, are mysterious. How can we be obligated to behave in a certain way regardless of our goals? Kant has an answer. Just as hypothetical oughts are possible because we have desires, categorical oughts are possible because we have reason. Categorical oughts, Kant says, are derived from a principle that every rational person must accept, the categorical imperative. In his Foundations of the Metaphysics of Morals, Kant expresses the categorical imperative as follows. Act only according to that maxim by which you can at the same time will that it should become a universal law. This principle provides a way to tell whether an act is morally permissible. When you are thinking about doing something, ask what rule you would be following if you actually did it. This rule will be the maxim of your act. Then ask whether you would be willing for your maxim to become a universal law. In other words, would you allow your rule to be followed by all people at all times? If so, then your maxim is sound and your act is acceptable. But if not, then your act is forbidden. Kant gives several examples of how this works. Suppose, he says, a man needs money, but no one will lend it to him unless he promises to pay it back, which he knows he won't be able to do. Should he make a false promise to get the loan? If he did, his maxim would be, whenever you need a loan, promise to repay it, even if you know you can't. Now, could he will that this rule become a universal law? Obviously not, because it would be self-defeating. Once this rule became a universal practice, no one would believe such promises, and so no one would make loans based on them. Kant gives another example about giving aid. Suppose, he says, I refuse to help others in need, saying to myself, what do I care? Let each person fend for himself. This, again, is a rule that I cannot will to be a universal law. For at some time in the future, I myself will need the help of others, and I will not want them to turn away. 9.3. Kant's arguments on lying. According to Kant, then, our behavior should be guided by universal laws, which are moral rules that hold true in all circumstances. Kant believed in many such exceptionless rules. We'll focus on the rule against lying, which Kant had especially strong feelings about. He said that lying under any circumstances is the obliteration of one's dignity as a human being.
Oh my god, why the fuck wasn't I just... Bro. That shit's so fucking funny, man. I was telling niggas about this shit, son. Like, telling niggas about this shit.
1. His main argument relies on the categorical imperative. We could not will a universal law that allows us to lie, Kant said, because such a law would be self-defeating. As soon as lying became common, people would stop believing each other. Lying would then have no point, and in a sense would be impossible because nobody would pay attention to what you say. Therefore, Kant reasoned, lying cannot be allowed. And so, it is forbidden under any circumstances. This argument has a flaw, which will become clearer with an example. Suppose it was necessary to lie to save someone's life. Should you do it? Kant would have us reason as follows. We should do only those actions that conform to rules that we could will to be adopted universally. If you were to lie, you would be following the rule, it is okay to lie. This rule could not be adopted universally because it would be self-defeating. People would stop believing one another, and then it would do no good to lie. Therefore, you should not lie.
Hold on, what is this? Yo, who's this author? James Rachel? Oh, shit. Yeah, this nigga James Rachel's the fucking man, bro. That nigga's fucking serious, bro.
Although Anscombe agreed with Kant's conclusion, she was quick to point out an error in his reasoning. The difficulty arises in step. Why should we say that, if you lied, you would be following the rule, it is okay to lie? Perhaps your maxim would be, I will lie when doing so would save someone's life. That rule would not be self-defeating. It could become a universal law. And so, by Kant's own theory, it would be all right for you to lie. Thus, Kant's belief that lying is always wrong does not seem to be supported by his own moral theory. 2. Many of Kant's contemporaries thought that his insistence on absolute rules was strange, and they said so. 1. Reviewer challenged him with this example. Imagine that someone is fleeing from a murderer and tells you that he is going home to hide. Then the murderer comes by and asks you where the man is. You believe that, if you tell the truth, you will be aiding in a murder. Furthermore, the killer is already headed the right way, so if you simply remain silent, the worst result is likely. What should you do? Let's call this the case of the inquiring murderer. Under these circumstances, most of us think, you should lie. After all, which is more important, telling the truth or saving someone's life?
Oh, what fucking page are we on, bro? Might get through a couple more of these sections.
Kant responded in an essay with the charmingly old-fashioned title on a supposed right to lie from altruistic motives, in which he gives a second argument against lying. Perhaps, he says, the man on the run has actually left his home, and by telling the truth you would lead the killer to look in the wrong place.
None of this shit matters, bro.
This argument may be stated in a general form. We are tempted to make exceptions to the rule against lying because in some cases we think the consequences of honesty will be bad and the consequences of lying will be good. However, we can never be certain about what the consequences will be. We cannot know that good results will follow. The results of lying might be unexpectedly bad. Therefore, the best policy is to avoid the known evil, lying, and let the consequences come as they may. Even if the consequences are bad, they will not be our fault, for we will have done our duty. A similar argument would apply to Truman.
Yeah, now he's giving his prescription against Kant.
The problems with this argument are obvious enough. So obvious, in fact, that it is surprising that a philosopher of Kant's caliber was not more sensitive to them. In the first place, the argument depends on an unreasonably pessimistic view of what we can know. Sometimes we can be quite confident of what the consequences of our actions will be, in which case we need not hesitate because of uncertainty. Moreover, and this is more significant philosophically, Kant seems to assume that we would be morally responsible for any bad consequences of lying, but we would not be responsible for any bad consequences of telling the truth. Suppose, as a result of our telling the truth, the murderer found his victim and killed him. Kant seems to assume that we would be blameless. But can we escape responsibility so easily? After all, we aided the murderer. This argument, then, is not convincing. Thus, Kant has failed to prove that lying is always wrong. The case of the inquiring murderer shows what a tough row he chose to hoe. While Kant believes that any lie obliterates one's dignity as a human being, common sense says that some lies are harmless. In fact, we have a name for them, white lies. Aren't white lies acceptable, or even required, when they can be used to save someone's life? This points to the main difficulty for the belief in absolute rules. Shouldn't a rule be broken when following it would be disastrous? 9.4. Conflicts between rules.
9.4. 9.5. Kant's respect for persons.
9.4. Conflicts between rules. Suppose it is held to be absolutely wrong to do X in any circumstances, and also wrong to do Y in any circumstances. Then what about the case in which a person must choose between doing X and doing Y? This kind of conflict seems to show that moral rules can't be absolute. Is there any way that this objection can be met? One way is to deny that such conflicts ever actually occur. Peter Geach took this view, appealing to God's providence. We can describe fictitious cases in which there is no way to avoid violating one of the absolute rules, he said, but God will not permit such circumstances to arise. Geach writes, if God is rational, he does not command the impossible. If God governs all events by his providence, he can see to it that circumstances in which a man is inculpably faced by a choice between forbidden acts do not occur. Of course such circumstances are consistently describable, but God's providence could ensure that they do not in fact arise. Contrary to what non-believers often say, belief in the existence of God does make a difference to what one expects to happen. Do such cases actually occur? There is no doubt that serious moral rules sometimes clash. During World War II, Dutch fishermen smuggled Jewish refugees to England in their boats, and sometimes they would be stopped by Nazi patrols. The Nazi captain would call out and ask the Dutch captain where he was going, who was on board, and so forth. The fishermen would lie and be allowed to pass. Clearly, the fishermen had only two options. Either they lie, or they let everyone on their boat be killed. No third alternative was available. They could not, for example, remain silent or outrun the Nazis. Thus, Geach appears to have been naive. Terrible dilemmas do occur in the real world. If such dilemmas occur, then doesn't this disprove the existence of absolute moral rules? Suppose, for example, the two rules "it is wrong to lie" and "it is wrong to facilitate the murder of innocent people" are both taken to be absolute. The Dutch fisherman would have to do one of these things, therefore, a moral view that absolutely prohibits both is incoherent. This type of argument is impressive, but it is also limited. It can be levied only against pairs of absolute moral rules. Two rules are needed to create the conflict. The argument won't stop someone from believing that there is just one absolute rule. And, in a way, everyone does. Do what is right is a moral principle we all believe in, which admits of no exceptions. We should always do what is right. However, this rule is so formal that it is trivial. We believe it because it doesn't really say anything. It is not the kind of absolute moral rule that Kant, Geach, and Anscombe wanted to argue for. 9.5. Kant's insight. Few contemporary philosophers would defend Kant's categorical imperative, yet it might be wrong to dismiss it too quickly. As 9.5. Kant's insight. Few contemporary philosophers would defend Kant's categorical imperative, yet it might be wrong to dismiss it too quickly. As Alasdair MacIntyre observes, for many who have never heard of philosophy, let alone of Kant, morality is roughly what Kant said it was, that is, a system of rules that one must follow from a sense of duty. Is there some basic idea underlying the categorical imperative that we might accept, even if we don't believe in absolute moral rules? I think there is. Remember that Kant viewed the categorical imperative as binding on rational agents simply because they are rational. In other words, a person who rejected this principle would be guilty not merely of being immoral but also of being irrational. This is a compelling idea. But what exactly does this mean? In what sense would it be irrational to reject the categorical imperative? Note that a moral judgment must be backed by good reasons. If it is true that you ought to do such and such, then there must be a reason why you should do it. For example, you may think that you ought not to set forest fires because property would be destroyed and people would be killed. The Kantian twist is to point out that if you accept any considerations as reasons in one case, you must also accept them as reasons in other cases. If there is another case in which property would be destroyed and people killed, you must accept this as a reason in that case too. It is no good saying that you can accept reasons some of the time, but not all the time, or that other people must respect them, but not you. Moral reasons, if they are valid at all, are binding on all people at all times. This is a requirement of consistency, and Kant was right to think that no rational person may deny it. This insight has some important implications. It implies that a person cannot regard herself as special. From a moral point of view, she cannot consistently think that she is permitted to act in ways that are forbidden to others, or that her interests are more important than other people's interests. As one commentator remarked, "I cannot say that it is all right for me to drink your beer and then complain when you drink mine." Moreover, it implies that there are rational constraints on what we may do. We may want to do something, say, to drink someone else's beer, but recognize that we cannot consistently do it because we cannot at the same time accept the implication that he may drink our beer. If Kant was not the first to recognize this, he was the first to make it the cornerstone of a fully worked out system of morals. But Kant went one step further and said that consistency requires rules that have no exceptions. One can see how his insight...
Rules have no exceptions, like I was saying, guys.
One can see how his insight pushed him in that direction. But the extra step was not necessary, and it has caused trouble for his theory.
Yeah, for sure.
Rules, even within a Kantian framework, need not be absolute. All that Kant's basic idea requires is that when we violate a rule, we do so for a reason that we would be willing for anyone to accept. In the case of the inquiring murderer, this means that we may violate the rule against lying only if we would be willing for anyone to lie in the same circumstances. And most of us would readily agree to that. President Truman could also say that anyone in his position would have been justified in dropping the bomb. Thus, even if Truman was wrong, Kant's arguments do not prove it. One might say that dropping the bomb was wrong because Truman had better options. Perhaps he should have shown the Japanese the power of the bomb by dropping it onto an unpopulated area. Negotiations might then have been successful. Or perhaps the Allies could have simply declared victory at that point in the war, even without a Japanese surrender. Saying things like that, however, is very different from saying that what Truman did violated an absolute rule.
Hey, man, it's crazy, man. It's crazy, it's crazy, crazy. Getting put in those positions, bro, is just so wild to the highest degree, bro. It's like, I don't know if I could be like a president or something, man. Making those type of decisions. You gotta be ethical, reasonable. I believe you gotta have God with you. It's just hard to, make those type of big decisions, guys. And it comes from what you believe in, Some people will go to the scripture. Some people will just use utilitarianism. Some people are based off of their nation. Their beliefs are... wait, what is the word I'm trying to think of? National... A national. Why am I not? Why am I brain? I got like a brain fart today. Like, national. National. Um, why am I not thinking about this word? No, why am I not thinking? Like they call Trump like a nationalist. 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 Why the fuck was I having a brain fart today? A person who strongly identifies with their own nation, supports their own interests. Yeah, that could be like more egotistical too. If you're too much of a nationalist. Yeah, you'll think a nigga would be more egotistical if he's only thinking about his nation and his nation alone. But some niggas do gotta prioritize that because every culture is not the same. So you do have to know what country that you're standing up for. And you gotta know your morals. Right? Because not every country's built the same, not every culture. So you have to, if you believe that your nation is the strongest nation, has the best morals, you got to stand up for that. Got to. It's not bad to be a nationalist. It can be a tad bit egotistical, but you got to stand up for your country. And that's the main idea, guys. That's the main idea. Alright, guys. I think we're about to just wrap this up. About to go ahead and wrap this up because I'm about to go ahead and shoot a video for you guys. So thank you guys so much for the stream. You know what I'm saying? Keep joining up. Keep letting me know which lectures you guys want me to create, what books we gotta read, some sources, send them through. I got a lot of stuff coming for you guys. A lot of people want to do interviews, so I got interviews on the way. Rappers, YouTubers, you name it, and then also I got some debates scheduled. I'm gonna be debating a few cats, and I got some people that's gonna come on and they're gonna debate each other and I moderate. So that's gonna be amazing because I want to be known for a guy who moderates good debates. You know what I'm saying? So, hey, thank you guys so much for joining the stream, man. And I'm gonna try to stream tomorrow. If not, we'll get back to it Sunday or Monday. You know what I'm saying? But thank y'all, man. I hope y'all have a good one, man. Peace out.